The Turks and Caicos Islands are a British overseas territory consisting of the larger Caicos Islands and smaller Turks Islands, two groups of tropical islands in the Lucayan archipelago of the Atlantic Ocean and northern West Indies. They are known primarily for tourism and as an offshore financial center. The resident population was 31,458 in 2012, of whom 23,769 lived on provincials in the Caicos Islands. July 2020 estimates put the population at 55,926. It is the third largest of the British overseas territories by population. The Turks and Caicos Islands lie southeast of Mayaguana in the Bahamas island chain, northeast of Cuba, and north of the island of Hispaniola. The Turks and Caicos Islands were inhabited for centuries by native Amerindian peoples. The first recorded European sighting of the islands occurred in 1512. In the subsequent centuries, the islands were claimed by several European powers, with the British Empire eventually gaining control. For many years the islands were governed indirectly through Bermuda, the Bahamas, and Jamaica. When the Bahamas gained independence in 1973, the islands received their own governor, and have remained a separate autonomous British overseas territory since. The Turks and Caicos Islands are named after the Turks cap cactus, and the Lucayan term Kayahiko, meaning string of islands. The red wool-coated cephalium of the plant resembled the fez hat of the Turkish male citizens. During the late Ottoman Empire, the first inhabitants of the islands were the Arawakan-speaking Taino people, who most likely crossed over from Hispaniola sometime from AD 500 to 800. Together with Taino who migrated from Cuba to the southern Bahamas around the same time. These people developed as the Lucayan. Around 1200, the Turks and Caicos Islands were resettled by classical Tainos from Hispaniola. It is unknown precisely who the first European to sight the islands was. Some sources state that Christopher Columbus saw the islands on his voyage to the Americas in 1492. However, other sources state that it is more likely that Spanish conquistador Juan Ponce de Leon was the first European in Turks and Caicos in 1512. In any case, after 1512 the Spanish began capturing the Taino and Lucayans as workers in the encomienda system, to replace the largely depleted native population of Hispaniola. As a result of this, and the introduction of diseases to which the native people had no immunity, the southern Bahama Islands and the Turks and Caicos Islands were completely depopulated by about 1513, and remained so until the 17th century. From the mid-1600s Bermudian salt collectors began seasonally visiting the islands, later settling more permanently with their African slaves. For several decades around the turn of the 18th century, the islands became popular pirate hideouts. During the Anglo-French War, many loyalists fled to British Caribbean colonies, also bringing with them African slaves. They developed cotton as an important cash crop, but it was superseded by the development of the salt industry, with the labor done by African slaves forcibly imported from Africa or the other Caribbean islands, and their descendants, who soon came to outnumber the European settlers. In 1799, both the Turks and the Caicos Island groups were annexed by Britain as part of the Bahamas. The processing of sea salt was developed as a highly important export product from the West Indies, and continued to be a major export product into the 19th century. In 1807, Britain prohibited the slave trade and, in 1833, abolished slavery in its colonies. British ships sometimes intercepted slave traders in the Caribbean, and some ships were wrecked off the coast of these islands. In 1837, the Esperança, a Portuguese slaver, was wrecked off East Caicos, one of the larger islands, while the crew and 220 captive Africans survived the shipwreck. 18 Africans died before the survivors were taken to Nassau. Africans from this ship may have been among the 189 liberated Africans whom the British colonists settled in the Turks and Caicos from 1833 to 1840. In 1841, the Troubadour, an illegal Spanish slave ship, was wrecked off the coast of East Caicos. All of the 20-man crew and 192 captive Africans survived the sinking. Officials freed the Africans and arranged for 168 persons to be apprenticed to island proprietors on Grand Turk Island for 1 year. They increased the small population of the colony by 7%. The remaining 24 were resettled in Nassau, Bahamas. The Spanish crew were also taken there, to be turned over to the custody of the Cuban consul and taken to Cuba for prosecution. An 1878 letter documents the troubadour Africans and their descendants as constituting an essential part of the laboring population on the islands. In 2004, marine archaeologists affiliated with the Turks and Caicos National Museum discovered a wreck called the Black Rock Ship that subsequent research has suggested may